Well, thank you. Good morning. This morning I want to share with you a little bit, like Nathan said, about not only Nicaragua, that's where I'm living at in Nicaragua, but also throughout Central America. I'm also I am supported here, but through the Christ Center Missions Ministries, and also the coordinator for Latin America and the Christ Center Champion Sports Ministries. And so I'm going to share a little bit with you. I want to share with you a little bit this morning about what God's doing throughout Central America and throughout these areas. And there is Central America has a lot of Indian influences, like Brother Billy was saying. It's got and through Guatemala, more northern Central America, through Guatemala and Honduras, you see a lot of people walking around with these really pretty clothes on, and they're like Indian still. And so there is a lot of Indians. So I'm encouraging your pastor to head over to Central America. I invite you to come to Central America. I wanted to show you a map if you don't know the different countries through Central America. They're not that big. If you see Nicaragua, it's about the size of Arkansas. So they're not that big, the countries aren't, but they're very populated and they're very poor. Through these countries, it makes a trail up to the States, and a lot of drug trafficking through Central America. You see a lot of stuff on TV about the danger and the buses that they stop and just a bunch of violence and stuff. I had a bunch of experience through that these last few weeks. We traveled up to Guatemala and back, down through Costa Rica, and so I'll share some of that with you as we go through. I want to just share with you the next few slides. These are some missionaries I work with through Central America. The first one is Guatemala. As you saw, that was the first country on the map. Guatemala, this is Brother David. I work with him with the sports ministry on the next slide. This is him with his family. This is us. I was able to go there about a week and a half ago. About 2 weeks ago, I was there in Guatemala, and I was able to share with him and be able to begin working with him. They love the sports ministry. They actually have the BMA, the Baptist Missionary Association camp there. That's where he's pastoring at. He's pastoring on the camp. They have a church there. And so we now have the sports ministry there, the Christ Center Champions. The next picture is in El Salvador. Now this is Brother Rigo Huerto. He's one of my very, very good friends. And I always joke with him. I always tease him and everything. And I told him, I was saying something about him being bald. I can't remember what it was, but I was talking about him. And he told me that God made all men bald. And the ugly ones, he covered them up. So we don't have many bald people here today, so that touches all of us. But that's really Brother Rigo Huerto. This is the Christ Center Champions in El Salvador. I worked a lot with Brother Rigo Huerto. We were there about 5 days, and I've gone a few times to El Salvador. And we worked in some places. One of the pastors we're working with and that we're going to start the sports ministries with, his name is Alfredo. And Brother Alfredo was one of the commanders in the Civil War, the El Salvadorian Civil War. These countries had civil wars about 30 years ago. Almost every country had a civil war. And so this guy was the commander, and he was the one that took over the capital city. Well, he has accepted Christ, and now he's a pastor there. And he was telling us, we were sitting in his church, and he was telling us stories about the drug lord who came in and accepted Christ, about how his leaders, they were drug sellers, they sold drugs on the streets, and how their lives had completely changed, and now they're pastors, they're working in the church. And so it was a huge blessing to be there working with him. So we have, this was us, I was getting him some materials and working with him. The bottom right picture is, they're all pastors. Each one of those guys have a church, and they each have the Christ Center Champions in their church. And they have shared with me so many stories of people that have came, youth that have came, just gone to an empty field and seeing 20, 30, 40 youth come and accept Christ, and then go out into their cities, go out into their areas, and just change those over for Jesus Christ. The next country is Honduras. Now this is a country, when I showed up to Honduras, I never liked Honduras because we always drove through southern Honduras, and it's just really dry. We always got stopped by the military. They had, like, if you see in Central America when the military walk around, they walk around with AK-47s and shotguns, and they'll look really mean. And so we've always gotten stopped and I guess you could say robbed. They pretty much try to bribe you to give them money so they'll let you go. And so I didn't care much for Honduras, but this time we went to northern Honduras, and that's where we had Brother Lenin. Brother Lenin and his family. Brother Lenin, he is also the Antino commander, which Antino is like a youth program. All these countries are connected through a church program called Antino. And Brother Lenin, he was very excited about the sports program. They love soccer. And so he was like, okay, we need to get these teams. We got them planned. We have everything. He showed me a map with it all planned out where he's been planning for the past few months and just waiting for me to get there to be able to sit down with them and begin starting this ministry there in his churches. And so they sent me some pictures back. They're not very clear. It's hard to see them. But they're playing soccer, but they're playing at night. Because they said in the daytime it gets so hot, it's so dry and so hot that they started playing soccer at night. So he even said that they had glow sticks they'd put around their neck, and you don't know what you're doing. You're just running through a field with glow sticks playing soccer with a glow-in-dark soccer ball. But that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. CCC in Honduras. He's also one of the directors of the BMA camp in Honduras, and so they're gonna they're playing there in the camp. They have CCC in the camp in Honduras. The next country is Nicaragua. Now, this is where I'm living at. This is where I've been for about 3 years now, 2.5 years. And this is Oscar and Tammy. I work with them a lot. They're the missionaries there. He's the leader for the Intendo program there in Nicaragua. The next picture, they work also with CCC there. These are different groups there in Central America, in Nicaragua. On the bottom right, the picture is me with the manager, Douglas, to my right. To my left, the right guy on the picture. Okay, from left to right. The left guy is Mauricio. He's the manager for Costa Rica. Then it's me, and then it's Douglas, the manager for Nicaragua. And so it's really cool to see these countries come together, and they're so different. Their languages, they use different words, and you got to be very careful. I've actually said the wrong words when I'm preaching in churches, because one country is a word will be a cuss word, in another country it's a good word. And so you have to learn all that, and you have to try to figure all this out. If not, you'll be saying the wrong words in church. And so that's I've had a bunch of embarrassing stories on that one. The good thing is I do know my English, so you don't have to be scared today. I also wanted to share with you, that was Christ Center Champions in Nicaragua. We have about 8 or 9 churches there in Nicaragua. I wanted to share with you also San Marcos. This is where I'm working now in San Marcos, Nicaragua. And the top left picture, it's going in order. The top left is in a field. That's where we started. I started meeting in a Bible study out in a field. And you can see it's pretty hot, pretty dry. The next picture over, there it takes you to the right, it shows us we got a tent. So we were meeting in a tent. This is within 4 months, a 4-month span. So each picture is about a month. Then we were in a tent. After that, we were able to talk to one of the members, and she let us go into her house, and we started having Bible studies in her house and meeting in the tents. So we were doing tent ministry also with the Bible study in the house, and the house filled up. So I started praying, God, just can you open a place for us to be able to go for a church building, either build something on this land or just give us a place. And like 100 yards right behind her house, someone told us, hey, you can come here and do the Bible study. It's a house on the corner. And they're like, you can rent this building here. We have a pretty nice building. So that's what we're using now. God opened up the doors, and that's where we're at now, the Centro de Vida Church in San Marcos, Nicaragua. And so that's some of the members at the bottom right. In San Marcos, the next slide. In San Marcos, we have we're doing, the top left is guitar lessons. We have guitar and piano. We have music ministry. And so we're teaching, we're doing music school. Then the bottom left is one of the services we were doing. We were sharing some discipleship lessons, some services. The top right is children's ministry. We have about 35 children that are faithful, that are attending every week. Right now, this morning, right now, they're meeting right now, singing children's songs and doing their Bible study in San Marcos. And then right under that is the youth group. We have 10 youth. I haven't started the youth group yet because I'm still building the church up. We started from one lady in a field, and then now we're building it up. So we've got 10 youth, and next month the plan is to start the youth group. And so be praying for that, for the San Marcos youth group. And then in the middle picture is 2 youth that I'm discipling to train out as missionaries. They've expressed a call. They accepted Christ in the mission, and then they expressed a call to plant cell churches. And so that's one of the things, is to start working with them and training with them, and then sending them out into their areas, into that area of Nicaragua to plant more cell churches. The next, okay, so that's Nicaragua. That's what we've been doing in Nicaragua. This is Costa Rica. This is one of my best friends in Central America. His name is Mauricio, and his wife Michelle. Michelle is from Guatemala, and Mauricio is from Costa Rica. So they cover all through Central America. And I showed up in Costa Rica. I've been there 4 times this year, so I go quite a bit. I go every 2 months. I'm there working with him. And Mauricio, I showed up in February with him, and we started meeting in some churches. We met in a pastor's meeting, started meeting with some churches. And so I shared with some of those churches about Christ Center Champions, the sports ministry. We tell them, hey, we'll go out here in the field, we're going to play soccer, and then have a Bible study, and we're going to keep playing soccer. And so what he did is he took me to this church called Orotina, in a place called Orotina. In Orotina, they had about 4 youth. So I sat down with these 4 youth, and I shared it with them. I talked with them. I shared with them, and they were very excited about the sports ministry. after that, like the next month, I was back in Costa Rica. And he said, okay, Joe, we want to have the sports ministry in our church. And so I was like, okay, here's a soccer ball and here's some shirts. Just I guess, go out there and start playing with them and see what God does. I mean, there's not much we had to do. Just play soccer and see what God does. So the next picture, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. The bottom left, they went from 4 youth to about 40 youth in like a month. And so it was 10 times as big. So God's been doing a lot of stuff. The first camp they started out with the soccer camp. And it was just a one-day activity for about 4 hours. And 20 youth showed up, and like 14 of them accepted Christ, just right there. And so their youth group went 14 new youth that they had to start training and working with. And now they have teams. Their youth group's growing. He's sending me messages. Every month they get about 40 new youth. And so they're growing very fast. They got about over 100 youth there in Orotina. And it's all results for the Christ-centered sports ministry. Also in Costa Rica, Mauricio has been working in other areas of Costa Rica. The top left is a presentation table. The top middle is a place called Esparza. They didn't have a church there. They took 3 youth to this concrete slab, and they said, let's play soccer. We want to start a church here. And within like 2 weeks, they had a church there. And so you can see how God just brought in all these youth. That was the first day they're playing there, and there was already like 40 youth that showed up that first day. And so they have a huge church they've been building there just on a concrete slab. A church without walls. This is Esparza. Then you see them more training material. Mauricio is training other pastors there in Costa Rica. In March I was there and I did a pastors conference to about 20 pastors, and all of them wanted Christ-centered champions. They loved it. They were all excited. They were making up plans. They were saying, hey, we can play soccer. And the old people were saying, hey, we can play darts. And so they were excited. They were excited about sports and discipleship. The next picture, I was very excited about this. This is very new. This is about a month old. And was in Nicaragua working in San Marcos, and Oscar, which is working with me in Nicaragua, he said, hey, Joe, I got a group here from Puerto Rico. They want to see San Marcos. So he brought them out to San Marcos. I met with them. And then they said they loved how I was working. They saw the sports ministry, how we were playing in San Marcos, and they asked me, Joe, hey, what is this? So I sat down with Freddie, in the picture, Freddie and Debbie, and the picture to the left. And they told me that they wanted the sports ministry in Puerto Rico. Well, I talked to Freddie, and he's the pastor of the Church Without Walls, La Iglesia Sin Paredes in Costa Rica, in Puerto Rico. And it's they've got about 4 churches, and they're very big churches. And he said that what they would like to do is take that sports ministry now and apply it through all their churches. And so I was like, okay, I have 2 days to get all this stuff ready and get it with you so you can take it back to your country. And so they took a mission trip to Nicaragua, was able to train them, get them supplies, and send them back to Puerto Rico. And they've been sending messages and posters and billboards of stuff they're doing and stuff on Facebook on camps they're having and sports ministries all through Puerto Rico. And so we've been able to start CCC through Puerto Rico, and God opened that door up. You didn't even have to go to Puerto Rico. He just sent them there to get them trained and send them back out. And so that's the recent work in Puerto Rico. The next slide. Okay, that shows you again the map of Costa Rica. So that's starting in Guatemala, in Guatemala City, and going all the way down through every capital. We've been able to establish. The next stop is Panama. We have very good connections. The guy's been sending me messages saying, hey, we want you to come here. We want to see Christ-centered champions here in Panama. So maybe within the next month or two, be able to go to Panama and be able to start Christ-centered champions in Panama. And also some exciting news. One of my friends pastors in Peru, which I took a trip to Peru about 4 or 5 years ago. And this pastor, his name is Andres Tinoco. In September, I was with him in El Salvador for a pastor's conference and also presenting the Christ-centered champions ministry. And he said that he wants to take it to Peru. And so I was like, okay, well, that's very exciting. Let's pray about it. I'll send you some more materials. I'll send you some information. So about a month later, he asked me for the manual and everything. So I sent it through the internet. And then about 2 weeks ago, he sent me a message and said, Joe, we need you here in Peru. We need somebody here. We need to start this ministry here in Peru. We want it now. We got about 5 churches ready to go. And so I was very excited. I'm not sure, that's prayer. That's a prayer request to get this thing to Peru, to get it started and see what God does there in Peru. A lot of things have been happening. A lot of things we see through Central America. Like I said, you don't feel safe. I mean, it's not safe driving through Central America, you can tell very, very easily. When we were driving through Honduras, we left at 3:30 in the morning, and you would get stopped every 10 minutes by the armed military and just harassing you, and just very scary situations. But even though going through these areas, you feel very safe because you know God's sending you, and God has you in His hand. And so even in the middle of the danger, even though you have the war going around you, you know you're just covered by God's grace, by His love. And so it's a blessing to be able to work in these countries, and even San Marcos, to see a church, which we started with a lady in her house. We started just meeting with a lady, asking her if we could have a church in her house, on a church meeting, a Bible study in her house once a week, starting in January. And now seeing how that's just changed, and how it's changed people's lives, and seeing the youth accept Christ and surrendering their life to ministry, to be sent out as missionaries, and to have those children, to be able to go through and visit the children and to see them. It's been a huge blessing. And I thank you for your support and your prayers. And if you have any questions, or you have anything, you can ask me after the service. And so and I have more pictures. I have a lot of stories to tell, a lot of funny stuff that's happened. And so thank you so much for your prayers, and thank you for your support. It's been a huge blessing for me in my life.